All right, everyone, welcome back. You know what time it is? Time to jump into another deep dive. And this time, we're tackling the Olympic Games.
The Olympics, huh?
Yep, from their very beginnings to the global phenomenon they are today.
I mean, they've been around forever, right?
Well, you might be surprised. We're starting back in 1892 with Baron Pierre de Coubertin. That's right, not ancient Greece.
Ah, the modern Olympics, that makes more sense.
Exactly. And we've got some fascinating sources to help us along the way. Official IOC documents from 1962.
Oh, primary source.
Some real deal, plus a modern overview for context. So we're getting that then and now perspective, how the games have changed over time.
Cool. Like a time capsule of the Olympic movement.
So first things first, 1896, Athens, the first modern Olympic Games. Can you imagine?
Must have been quite different from what we see today.
Oh, absolutely. Way smaller, less organized, sometimes even held as part of World's Fairs.
Wait, seriously, like next to the pie-eating contest?
Yeah, pretty much. But hey, it was a new thing. The Olympic movement was just starting out, figuring things out as they went.
So those early games were like the beta version?
Exactly. Speaking of early games, get this. Some athletes at the 1900 Paris Games didn't even realize they were competing in the Olympics.
No way. How is that even possible?
I know, right? Talk about a low-key Olympics. And here's another fun fact. The athlete parade, that iconic part of the opening ceremony.
You mean all the countries walking in with their flags?
Yep, that didn't start until 1908.
Wow. So many things we take for granted today weren't always there.
Right. It's amazing how much things have changed. Remember that story about Fred Loers, the marathon runner, who hitched a ride in a car during the 1904 St. Louis game?
Oh, yeah. He almost got away with it, too, until he was disqualified.
What a story. And you know what it really highlights?
What's that?
The whole idea of amateurism. That was a huge deal back then.
Ah, yes. Competing for the love of the sport, not for money.
Right. Those 1962 IOC documents we mentioned, they're full of discussions about amateurism. It was at the heart of the Olympic philosophy.
And probably a lot harder to maintain as time went on.
Oh, definitely. Imagine, professional sports were gaining popularity, endorsements were becoming a thing.
The lure of the big bucks?
Yeah.
So how did they even define amateur back then?
Well, it was tricky. The documents even talk about these pseudo-amateurs.
Pseudo-amateurs? What does that even mean?
Basically, athletes who were getting funding from their governments or organizations, blurring the line between amateur and professional.
I see. So even back then, they were wrestling with that question. What does it mean to be an amateur athlete?
A question that still resonates today. How has that definition evolved? What does it mean in the modern world?
Big questions, lots to unpack there.
We've got plenty to dive into. From the Olympic flag to the first Olympic village, there's so much more to explore.
Yep.
Right, so we've talked about those early games, the whole amateurism thing.
Yeah.
But the Olympics have grown so much, right? It's more than just, like, who's the fastest runner?
Oh, for sure. It's become this global event full of tradition and symbolism.
Like the Olympic flag, for instance, first introduced in 1913.
5 rings, 5 continents. It's a pretty powerful image.
A symbol of unity, bringing the world together through sport.
And then there's the Olympic Village. That started in 1932 at the Los Angeles Games.
The village.
Yeah, it's where all the athletes stay together during the games.
So, like, thousands of athletes from all over the world, all in one place.
Exactly. Sharing meals, exchanging cultures. It's amazing.
I bet there are some great stories that come out of the village.
Definitely. It fosters a sense of camaraderie, like beyond the competition itself.
Oh, for sure. It's like a little global community, even if it's just for a few weeks.
Right. Oh, speaking of things we see at the games, did you know that standardized medals, gold, silver, bronze, weren't a thing until 1904?
Wait, what? So before that, what did they give out? Like a blue ribbon?
Not quite. It varied from games to games. Sometimes trophies, sometimes wreaths, even works of art.
Wow, really? Works of art. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was a bit more free-flowing back then. And of course, we can't forget about the Winter Games.
Oh, right. Winter sports deserve their time in the spotlight, too.
For sure. They first held the Winter Games in 1924, and it's been a huge part of the Olympics ever since.
So many different events, so many incredible athletes.
It just shows how the games have expanded over the years, encompassing more and more of the world of sport.
And speaking of expanding and encompassing things, let's talk about politics.
Ah, yes, the intersection of sports and politics. It's a complicated relationship.
The IOC has always tried to keep the games separate from political influence, right? I mean, the 1962 documents make that pretty clear.
Yeah, there's this desire to have the Olympics be a space where countries can come together regardless of their differences.
But it's not always easy, is it?
What is
Politics
that?
has a way of creeping in.
Sadly, yes. I mean, think about the boycotts throughout history, or those times when the games were used for propaganda purposes.
It's a reminder that the Olympics don't exist in a vacuum. They're part of the bigger world, with all its complexities.
It makes you think, doesn't it, about the power of sport, but also the realities of the world we live in.
Yeah. You know, the 1962 document actually says, and I quote, "The games are not and must not become a contest between nations." Powerful stuff.
Absolutely. It speaks to that ideal of unity and sportsmanship, but in reality, it's often about national pride and medal counts.
It makes you wonder, like, how do we balance those two things, the ideal and the reality?
It's a question worth considering. Before we get too deep into that, though, maybe we should lighten things up a bit.
Oh, you mean with a different topic?
Exactly. Have you ever heard of the fine arts competitions at the Olympics?
Wait, the Olympics had art competitions?
They did. It was part of Baron de Coubertin's vision, this idea of integrating art and culture with athletics.
Wow, that's so interesting. So, like, what kind of art?
All sorts. Architecture, literature, music, painting, sculpture, you name it.
You're kidding. So you could win an Olympic medal for a painting.
Yep. It was about celebrating human creativity in all its forms, not just athletic achievements.
I had no idea. When did they stop doing that?
They discontinued the judged competitions in 1948, but the games still often feature cultural exhibitions and events.
Okay, that makes sense. So even though they're not competing for medals anymore, art is still a part of the Olympic experience.
Right. It reminds us that the Olympic spirit goes beyond just physical prowess. It's about striving for excellence in all aspects of human endeavor.
It's amazing how much we've covered already. We've gone from the very first games to the Olympic Village, from amateurism to politics, and even art.
We've barely scratched the surface, but there's one big question we haven't tackled yet.
Which is?
The future of the game.
The future, huh? The games have come a long way since those early days. I mean, what's next? Flying cars in the opening ceremony.
Huh. Who knows? But seriously, the world's changing fast, right? Technology, climate change, social movements, it's all impacting the games.
Yeah, for sure. So how do the Olympics keep up? How do they stay relevant?
Well, they have to adapt, just like they always have. I mean, look at the rise of esports.
Esports, yeah.
Uh,
Video game competition.
Right. Could we see esports in the Olympics someday? It's a real possibility.
Wow, that would be something. And what about, like, the environmental impact? The games are huge. How can they be more sustainable?
That's a big one and a tough one. I mean, you need tons of infrastructure, travel, energy. It's a challenge for sure.
Definitely. But it feels like these are the kinds of questions the Olympic movement needs to be thinking about, right? To ensure the games have a future.
Absolutely. It's not just about the competition anymore. It's about the impact, the legacy they leave behind.
And that goes for all of us, right? As viewers, as fans, we have a role to play too. What do we want the games to represent? What values do we want them to uphold?
It's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement, the medal counts, the national pride, but maybe we need to step back and think about the bigger picture.
Exactly. The Olympics have always been about more than just winning. They're about pushing boundaries, inspiring people, bringing the world together.
And that's something worth preserving no matter what the future holds. And who knows what that future looks like. Maybe we'll see new sports, new technologies, new ways of experiencing the games.
Maybe virtual reality Olympics.
Hey, I wouldn't rule it out. The point is, the games are always evolving. They reflect our world, our values, our dreams. It's up to all of us to shape what those reflections will be.
That's a great way to put it. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the Olympic Games, we leave you with this. What do you see for the future of the Olympics? What would you like to see change? What should stay the same?
The games belong to all of us. Let's make sure they continue to inspire for generations to come.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through the history, the present, and the future of the Olympic Games. It's been an incredible deep dive, and we hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.